There we go. What's going on, everybody? I'm here with the one and only Kyree Oliver. Maybe to give this man a little bit of introduction, he helps us with the ads, but this is a pretty special person. He has done close to 100 million in his own business for his clients over the last 3 or 4 years, I think, which is
4.5, yeah.
1.5 years, which is incredibly impressive. But what's more impressive is that this guy has never done a formal marketing course. So you see all those gurus with the marketing course on there. He's like, nope, haven't done that. And he's getting insane results for his clients. So that's super fascinating. Kyree, thank you for being here, because it's really it's a cool way to reconnect and talk.
Yeah, man. I'm happy to come on. Thank you for having me on.
Gotcha, man. I was really curious, when I was reading through your stuff, and there were so many things that I didn't know, because we just started working together I had very little background information. Sean Kemp just recommended, work with that guy, is the best. So here we are. But what made you start this whole thing, and what made you even comprehend this whole Facebook ads, marketing stuff, the coin, and but what was kind of the stages that you went through before you got to such a insanely high level?
Yeah, I actually started doing it for a friend of mine. We'd both gotten into the online coaching speaking space at the same time, and he had hired another marketing company. I think he worked with them for 6 months, and he was spending $3,000 a month on marketing. He was spending another on them. He was spending another $1,500 on running his ads, and all I saw were his page likes going up, and I didn't know anything about ads marketing at all, especially with Facebook. So I think after 5 months, they had gotten him 30,000 followers on his Facebook. And so it looked cool. And then I think I was over at his house one day and I was making fun of him because I was like, you have 30,000 followers and you post something, you get 7 likes. Or there's no engagement. Nobody cares about what you have to say, obviously. So something needs to be changed. Something needs to be different. And I just asked, hey, does this team tell you what they're doing? Do they have a way of measuring it? Literally knowing nobody's doing anything. And we went in, actually, I looked at the insights on his page, just kind of clicking around one day, and I saw that they had bought, out of his 30,000 followers, they'd bought 28,000 of them from the Philippines. And that's why nobody was engaging. And I was like, oh, you're legit getting ripped off. They're not even attempting to do a good job here. Okay, yeah, fire them. And so he's like, I just don't know anybody else who does this. So naturally, I was 20, living in a trailer, making no money. I was like, well, just let me try it. And then if I get good at it, give me 3 weeks. If I can't double what they've already done as far as engagement on your posts, because that's what's important right now, pay me $600 a month. And so I think it was 4 days, something like that. We absolutely killed it because this was a good friend of mine. I knew him. I knew how he operated for himself. I knew the things to say. I knew the type of content to post, just because I'd been around him for so long. I knew when we were in conversations with people what they wanted to hear from him or what he would say that really resonated with people. And so kind of along the way, I was also interviewing people just for my own speaking business. I wanted to get a really good grasp on who we are as human beings and how we operate. And at 19 or 20, I didn't know how to do that for myself. Has a 19 or 20-year-old have the experience to really be able to bring this to people? So the answer that I found was interviewing people. I just started interviewing anybody I could. Teachers, friends, family members, and it just spread. Oh, hey, my uncle used to run this big company. Cool. Interview him. I've interviewed 3 death row inmates. I've interviewed mental patients. I've interviewed homeless people. I've interviewed millionaire and billionaires. So I just started getting a really good grasp of us as people, humans. And slowly, I think probably over the next 9 months, started really tying that into marketing. I started seeing how what I was doing for my friend with marketing was tying into the things that I was learning about people in those interviews. And probably about, I'd say, a year later, right actually when I moved to Arizona, I started picking up on, oh, I can actually use the things that I'm learning in these interviews to sell on Facebook ads. If I can learn what this person wants and what this person desires, I can put a good offer in front of them that chose the answer to that desire. And I think it just started kind of spreading from there, but it started, again, just doing it for a friend.
How many people do you think you interviewed?
Over 1,000, actually. Like I like really took off with it.
Yeah, it's very simple, right? People leave clues and just figure it out. Like ask and you will receive. Like we've all had it. And then not just that, but also actually listen to what they have to say. It's meaning behind the words. Yeah.
That was the part. Because I started off recording the interviews and I started off taking notes. And what I realized was it took away from the conversation. People aren't as open when they know they're being recorded. People aren't as honest when they know they're being recorded. I also would convince myself, oh, I'll just listen back to this later. So I don't have to really be engaged in the conversation because I can always listen back later. Turns out nobody's going to listen back later. I wasn't going to listen back later. So I just ended up shutting off my microphone and just saying, hey, look, I want to have this conversation for me. And I had to trust in that moment too, that the information that's relevant from this or the information that's really going to be helpful is going to stick. And I'm going to really be able to call back to this information. So now I just have this thing in my head of all these interviews that I've done. And it feels like when necessary, a story pops up, a story from somebody that I've interviewed pops up, and I can tie it into my life, or I can tie it into marketing, or I can tie it into something that's helpful now, 6-7 years later.
Maybe going back to stories, right? Because stories seem to be the connecting thing that everybody's talking about. Like you need to use stories, but people underestimate it. Like it really is. Like you need to use stories.
I think people conveniently underestimate it because it's complex. So I talk about this quite a bit with people who are not good at something. Often will discredit the thing as being invaluable. So if I'm not good at talking to girls, I'm going to talk about how much I don't need to talk to girls. Because if I can devalue it in my own head, I can feel better about not being great at it. So I really think most people just aren't great at listening to stories. Most people aren't really good at dissecting stories and pulling lessons out of them. And so people choose not to focus as much on the human aspect, especially in marketing, because marketing attracts kind of the antisocial guy, the guy who likes clicking around on a computer. And I've realized that was the biggest differentiator from me is I'm not the analytics type guy. I love human interaction. I love human behavior. And I get to learn how to translate that into what I do behind a computer screen.
I couldn't agree more. Like the main thing also is like when you would say like just focus on stories or like just be yourself or whatever it is. To you, that means just be yourself means all these fucking connections right here, all the way to the bottom, and to somebody that has no clue about it. Maybe like let's say a gamer in his mom's basement who's on heroin all the time. It's like just be yourself. It's like nothing, like emptiness right here. Like and that's a big key, like really like understand like what do those words really mean. The same with your clients, we interview them, like what does this whole thing really mean? What do they mean by this? And then just ask and they will clarify and be like, oh, I was so wrong. And then you just keep doing that until you're less wrong. And then eventually you'll be like right most of the time. And suddenly you have a successful business.
Well, people are impatient with that too. People are impatient with being wrong at first. And then, like you said, being less wrong until you end up right. I don't think people are willing to trust that process for themselves.
Yeah, you can only connect the dots after looking back. You just need to keep going, take the leap of faith. And oftentimes you need to change yourself. Like it's like really you need to change yourself. Like you will have the system and be like, hey, wait a second, but I'm not even able to execute on this. Or I have mindset issues. I'm already going to sabotage myself. Or because I think I wouldn't do it this way. It doesn't work for anybody. Not true.
It comes back to the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, the world around us, other people. You come into this space thinking everybody's going to screw you over. You're going to start realizing people screwing you over. A lot of these things become self-fulfilling prophecies where you believe a certain thing and you start to see it more. It's like when you buy a certain car, everywhere you go, you start to see that car when you'd never really noticed it as much before. It's because your eyes are trained into that. Same thing for success, same thing for failure. You start to become what you see, especially because you're telling yourself, let's call it a micro story about that thing or about that person or about that concept or about that software that everybody's using that you don't like. There's always a story happening.
Right, and that's really what shapes society or identity, everything. But it's not fixed, especially if you look internally. It's not fixed because all stories are mental constructs that people have created. Like even time isn't real. Like we created time, like it doesn't exist. Like it's all a mental construct, and stop being so fixated in who you think you are and start looking at what actually gets results.
And test them out. Like test out different stories, test out different narratives around this thing until you find the one that works for you.
100%. What do you think is different about you? What do you think is very different about you? Why you get results with ads and some people just don't? Is anything special about you? Are you different?
No, and I think that's the special part. I think the part about me that I've realized in this space and in my coaching business is the power is in the fact that I'm not much different than you. Because if I'm, this is what the guru space does. I'm inherently better than you, so you should listen to me. And in my mind, that only separates and isolates you from your audience. Even if you believe it, it's not a smart thing to market yourself as is I'm just inherently better or I'm inherently more hardworking, because it removes the ability for the audience to come up to your level or to feel like they can go along the journey with you. When I come in and I can say, hey, look, I was an athlete. I've never taken a marketing course. I've never done a marketing class in my life. And look at all these results. I can go into a room full of marketers and show most of the courses and concepts and products that are out there. I'm not saying that nobody needs them, not saying that there's no utility to them, but you can definitely do this thing without it. Here's maybe something else to focus on. And so I think the choice to go against what I saw everybody else doing in the space, which is the same thing I've done in other successful areas of my life. I forget who, I think it was Albert Einstein who said basically to learn the rules of any environment you're in and then break them at your will. But you have to learn how the thing operates first, or bend them at your will, I think it is. You have to learn what the thing is first. You have to learn your environment. You have to learn your space. You have to learn, call your quote unquote competitors or detractors. What do they think? How do they think? How do they get to that opinion? I tell people the best way to practice this is in religion or in politics. Take the exact opposite stance of what you believe and argue it to yourself and really start to understand why these people have gotten to this place. Why do these people believe this? And can I empathize? Not sympathize. Can I empathize? Can I say, I can understand why you think that way genuinely, without demonizing, without calling you stupid, without making you think you're this horrible person? How can I get myself to the other side of the tracks? And what you end up finding out is the other side of the tracks is your consumer. Because when you're in your industry, you know all the industry talk that the consumer is not aware of. But when you can jump over to that other side and say, okay, if I didn't understand all this, how would I think about it? That's when you start to answer the questions. That's when you start to create your customer journey. That's when you start to learn how to build relationships with your customer base.
So fucking powerful. And it's also really a manifestation of society on showing why it's so difficult. With COVID, we didn't put like one side of the like people that were like against it and people that were for it, like against each other. Let's debate for 5 hours. Let's get the smartest people here and the smartest people here, let them debate. And let's see what happens. And it doesn't mean that this person is going to become this person, but it does mean that the extremes will be less. Extremes will become much less. You actually have an idea about what the other person's talking about.
Yeah,
and actually influence them. Yeah,
I think it makes all the difference. The biggest thing that I saw in the last few years of this was when Joe Rogan interviewed Bernie Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
And to watch that interview, because in the entrepreneurship space, it is incredibly conservative, right-winged, success, no excuses, those type of guys. And I saw when Joe Rogan interviewed Bernie Sanders, I didn't comment on it, but I saw my timeline change over the next few days. And they realized that the other side is still human. And that was a big thing for me. The best, I think, example that we've seen in our lifetimes, even though I was really young and you were even younger, was 9/11. When 9/11 happened, we didn't have rifts in our society anymore in the United States. We were Americans and we were wary of outside of Americans. But as a country, there was a cohesion that happened that I haven't seen since. And we probably hadn't seen before since like World War II. But there was a cohesion and a breaking down of walls and barriers that allowed us to communicate in ways that we never had before.
Yeah, and it really like makes the playing field equal. It's like what is really, really important. And it's human nature. Like we have very similar beliefs and values and things that we really, truly value. And even if you look at like war, like you talk to like Navy SEALs and stuff like that, they're like, well, actually, all those things that you think are real aren't really real, because let's say we would go into another country, would just snatch your ass. Like you'd be gone. Like you think you have the rights, you think you have all these things, but really it's all made up by us.
It's made up by our government to make you feel safe. Yeah. I understand. Like it's to make regular people feel safe.
Gotcha. Who are some of your clients that you love working with? Like who do you love working with? Like why do you love working with them? And like for me, what's actually interesting is like maybe just like me, you've gone through a progression where you first take on pretty much anybody, like your friend, you take him on, and then you take on other people, and then you go through a progression and be like, hey, I actually don't like working with this person or with that person. Like what has kind of been the progression that you've gone through, like in a sense of like you, to me at least, you seem like a very alpha grounded male who knows what he wants and knows what he doesn't want.
Yeah.
Was that true in the beginning already? Or did you have to go through a progression of being like, actually, fuck these people?
Yeah.
Fuck them. Like, I just work with these people.
I realized, I mean, at first I had to pay bills. So it's like I have to buy dog food and I'm late on rent for 2 weeks. I got to figure something out. So when I started out, and when most people start out, I think you just take on anybody who's willing to pay you. Anybody willing to throw $500 at me, I was running their project and I was happy about it because I was able to pay my bills. And then you get to the next stage in your business and you get better clients. Maybe I was charging $1,500 a month, $2,000 a month at the time. And that was when I started working with people who had businesses already. They weren't the absolute cheapest people. They also weren't paying like full scale agencies either. And I think it got better. Again, I think it was a better clientele. It was mostly in the coaching, consulting, like online education space. That's most of the money that I've generated has been through that. And I realized that they were better clients, but they weren't amazing clients. They were still headaches. They were still messaging me 4 or 5 times a day. They were still, 6 hours into a campaign, they'd call me freaking out. Hey, this isn't working. Hey, we need to take this down. Hey, all this stuff needs to happen. And then I think I landed on my first client that had been already generating millions. And they talked to me on our upstart calls and they talked to me on our update calls. But in between, I didn't hear from them and I was allowed to do my job. And that was, I think, one of the things that I started to realize. And I see this meme passing around the entrepreneurship space of like $500 client and then all the things that are wrong with a $500 client and then $50,000 client, money's in your bank account or something like that, which is something I realized was true, was the more people paid, the better clients they were. And I don't know if one created the other or second created the first, but higher paying clients have always in my business been such better clients. But it's a journey to get there. And so I think what some people do is they go way too fast. It's like, oh, I sold it for $2,000 last month. Cool. The next person I'm going to charge $8,000. People really, really run themselves dry of their market because they don't develop the skills to demand the price that they're looking to pay. I deal with that with my students a lot of times. Hey, I was writing a VSL and I charged $2,000 for the last guy. I'm going to charge this guy $9,000. This literally happened like 3 weeks ago with one of my students. And we talk about it. I say sell 3 to 5 at your current price point and then bump it up. But you're not going to bump it up 4.5 times. Double it. 3 or 4 or 5 sales at that price point, double it, because your actual value is going up, not what you think you can charge. Because I heard him on an interview saying, oh yeah, I charge up to $12,000 for a VSL, right? And in my head, I'm like, That's getting up closer to like what Sean charges. And you're not him. You haven't produced what he's produced, not even anywhere close. Sean's one of the few other guys who are still in their 20s that I know that are responsible for like multiple 8 figures, almost 9 figures in business for their clients. And so I realized that it was this game that people are playing of trying to raise their prices way too often and way too fast. And I think what we figure out is the time exchange. How much does somebody have to pay you? Let's say a project takes you 40 hours in a month, right? One project, one client takes you 40 hours in a month if you're like a service-based business, something like that. How much does that person have to pay you in order for you not to go golfing? In order for you to give up something not that you love, but that you enjoy doing? And that time exchange, I think, is more in line with what you should be charging. So if I was to say, hey, you're planning on going golfing on Friday, but I need you on this call, how much would I have to pay you to skip golfing to go on this call? If it's $80, then multiply that times 40 hours, and that's pretty much what you should be charging me per month. If it's $100, if it's $200 to miss out on doing what you enjoy, that's a little bit better way that I've seen of figuring out what you should be charging. And eventually you get to this point where somebody offers me $5,000, but I feel like going to smoking a cigar. I might not I might not take the $5,000 because I don't need it. And I think that's the point that you want to get to. That's not the point that you get to in 6 months in your business, in 9 months in your business, in a year. I've been training for this, let's call it, for the last 8 years. I've been doing this for the last 5 years. And I'm just now in the last probably 9 months getting to the point where not many people can offer me enough money to do something I don't want to do. And that hasn't been the case in the past. And so I think, again, it's an energetic exchange. Let's call it that. How much money does this person have to pay you to do something you don't want to do? And how much less would somebody have to pay you to do something you enjoy? And what you end up figuring out is I get paid to do only projects that I enjoy. But that's only on the back end of all the work and figuring out what type of clients you don't want. And that's totally different for everybody. Some people care about political views. Some people care about religious views. Everybody's marker of what makes a good client is very different. But for me, it's always an internal thing of, am I going to enjoy working with this person? And the level to which I enjoy working with this person is exactly the same as how much I'm going to charge the person, or how much I would charge a person. There's people who come to me for projects and I'm like, yeah, I would run it for $25,000 a month. I don't charge that at all. But I give people pricing based on the energy exchange that I'd have to do. Am I going to have to deal with you too much? Am I going to have to handle your phone calls at 3:00 in the morning? Am I going to have to like really put extra time, effort, and energy and take away from my other clients that I enjoy working with to work with you? Price is higher.
I think that's such a fascinating way. I've actually never heard anybody talk about it that way. Like, how much is this energy exchange worth? It's so powerful. And yeah.
And again, you can't start there. This is the problem when I talk about this. And this is why sometimes I hesitate to talk about this. If you start a business a year ago, please don't use what I just said. Because you can't demand an energy exchange yet. You are still trading time for money. It can be great money, but you're still trading time for money. I'm trading energy for energy. And your energy is in the form of money. My energy is in the form of, I don't get to go hold my baby right now because I'm working on your project. I don't get to go play with my dogs right now because I'm working on your project. It's a good marker to get to. It's not a starting point.
I love how you clarified that, because to me it makes so much sense. Because last week I went to New York just for a week. I was like, actually, this thing is supposed to be fun and enjoyable, and like, why are not more people doing it? Why is it just grind until you die? Why don't you make it more like seasons? Like, you work really hard and then like you actually pluck the fruits of your labor and you do something with that. Like, yeah.
Or you do both, because that's what I'm realizing in my coaching business right now. I have a call right after you in a half hour. I'm going to go play on my PlayStation and coach a client that's paying me $7,500 a month to coach them. And I'm going to be playing video games. It's insane. But I realize I built that for myself. I've built it so that I can have both in that business. Now, in my marketing business, I'm on the computer, so I have to do things. But my coaching clients are paying for me and my personality and when I'm at my best. When am I at my best is when I'm relaxed. And when I have something taking up the little corners of my mind, because my mind is in a million places. If I'm doing 2 tasks at a time, I coach best when I'm playing a video game, smoking a cigar, or driving in my truck. And it's because those actions take the back corner of my brain that's normally rambling off ideas, and it allows me to actually focus on my conversation with you. It allows me to actually give you a better piece of me. And it's something I figured out probably 9 months ago to a year ago, that people actually get a better version of me when I'm doing something else while I'm coaching them. And so again, it's a good marker to hit. It's not a good place to start off in your business. Don't hop on client calls while you're playing Call of Duty.
No, I agree. I was doing jiu-jitsu at the 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, which is one of the best schools in the world. And they literally started off with like, hey, if you are a beginner, listen to exactly what we have to say. Mm-hmm. If you're just getting to purple or brown belt, like actually don't necessarily listen to what we have to say. Figure out what works for you. Because you have the basics, now you can fuck with them. And we encourage that. Like if this grip works for you, and we recommend that this grip or whatever it is, use this grip. Like use what works for you. Like figure it out. And then with the product, that's key. Like have a really good product, because you will actually get referrals. Like Sean recommended me to you for a reason. Like it's not because you suck.
But that's the thing, is learn the system and bend the rules at your will. You just said the exact same thing. That's what the game is. Learn the system first and then bend the rules. I can't tell you how many branding coaches, how many random coaches, because they know that I have money and they know that I have status online. So I get pitched random stuff all the time, so that for people hoping that I'll pay them to do something, or that they can work for me for free, and then they get to talk about working with Kyree on their timeline. And so I get those pitches all the time, and I realize like so many of these people give me such bad advice, but it would have been great advice if I was beginning. Some lady messaged me the other day about optimizing my time, and I can make you more efficient. I was like, I don't want to be more efficient. I like my time that I enjoy. I like having my free time. I don't want to fill it. I don't want to work more. I don't want to do that side of things. I'm very conscious of how much work I take on. I don't take on too many projects ever, because I want to give my time to the projects that I choose to take on. But again, it's something you earn. But most people, I'd say 90-something% of businesses, are still in learning the system. Learn the ecosystem, learn your atmosphere, learn where you're at, learn what other people are doing well in your space. As soon as you get to that point where money's not really helping you feel better about yourself and your business, that's when you can start to notice the energy exchange. Start to recognize how much you're actually putting into these projects besides just the hours of your time.
Gotcha. And that might lead into the last thing I really wanted to talk about, because when I went on my first call with you, I was surprised how there was pretty much no closing involved, in the sense of not in the traditional way. Like it was very much like, at least what I felt was like, I am really fucking good at what I do. I'm really picky. I don't disclose any information about my clients. Mm-hmm. And you almost gave too little information. It's like, wow. Huh.
There's a balance there.
Yeah. Obviously there's a balance here. Yeah.
Because too little information actually misses me out on the project, but just enough information actually ends up raising your status in the sales call. But the base thing of that is I'm unattached. I'm interested and I'm unattached. If you were to say, hey man, I found it cheaper over here, we don't want to work with you, we're going to go over here, I don't argue with you. I know the salespeople who start talking down on the competition, or start saying, well, what are they doing for you? Start picking it apart. I just don't need it. And so what I realized is, now that I have the freedom to say no to people, I also have the freedom to accept a yes instead of trying to pitch you a yes. So I don't ever end my calls with, okay, so how do we work together? I'm more comfortable sitting in silence and waiting for you to come to that conclusion. And I think we did it on our call. You had asked me the right questions, which were great. I had answered the questions, and we got to that lull in the conversation where it goes from adding value to saying, how do we work together? And what I do in every single conversation is I sit there and I'll smile, or I'll say, hey, did you need anything else? I don't pitch. I don't say, how do we work together? I don't say, well, here, let me send over an invoice. I get you to say that. You're the person who has to come to the decision, because that's one of the things I noticed. My better clients were the ones who chose to work with me. It wasn't me trying to convince you to work with me, especially when you come from a referral. People who come from referrals, I already have the endorsement of somebody that you respect and that you trust. Because of that, I get the added benefit of not having to fully justify myself. Now, you have to see, and we have to talk, and you have to feel out in our conversation that I'm a person who knows what I'm talking about. So there's certain things that you would say about, oh, well, I talked to this person in this marketing industry to test that I know the industry, that I actually know what I'm saying, and I can pick up on that. You're testing that I'm actually the guy that you were told that I was. But as soon as I've proven that, I have nothing else to prove other than we're a good fit personality wise. If I enjoy talking to you, that's when we open up the do we work together conversation. But one is, am I qualified? The second is, are you qualified to work with me? The third is, do we enjoy working together? Do we enjoy conversing like this? Are we still able to talk to each other and have genuine conversation if something goes wrong, which we've done? Okay, hey, this isn't working. If the answer is this isn't working, shut it all off, and this is horrible, and this is, oh my God, we're not going to work well together. If the answer is this thing isn't working, hey, can we talk about what to do differently and where to shift and how to pivot, and can you help us? I'm totally down with that.
Couldn't agree more. And what was most impressive to me was like your groundedness. Like sometimes when I talk to people, I give these tests just to see how they respond. Like this one guy, I think like 8 months ago, and he was talking that he was making like 50K a month, and to me it wasn't that impressive. And I was like, I just wanted to see what he had, because he charged I think 3 or 4K. And I was like, that's really low. So, but I was interested because he had some things that I wanted to learn. And we got in the middle of the conversation, or almost at the ending of the conversation, and I was like, you know what, let's just keep it simple. If you can show me right now that you have like 30K, even out of the 50 coming into your Stripe account, just like a little screenshot or whatever I need right now with the date, or just like share your screen quick. Like I don't need to see any other information. Like I'll purchase right away. I transfer the money right here. And then he started like fully like breaking, like his personality like broke right there. And you saw his mind just shattering, being like, I am not the person and like it became so awkward that I just had to leave eventually. I was like, yeah, it's not going to work.
I love those interactions though, because it shows the person. Because the person who has it, oftentimes, I guarantee you, there's a scenario in which he didn't show you the bank account that you would have still hired him. If he'd come up with a good, hey, that doesn't actually matter, but here's what I've done for my clients, you would have hired him on the spot. But the fact that you're freaking out is what makes me not want to hire you.
It's the response to the question, not to, yeah.
Oh my God, yes, that's a good one.
I've broken that one down so many times. It was like, yeah, it really was the way he responded. Because I could have made up really good reasons. Like, for example, like, no, actually, like in our country, like it's very confidential. We can't share this. However, I can, whatever, just as simple as that. Or you would have probably handled it like, oh no, I don't do that. And just like stare at me, and I would be like, oh.
Well. And then here are my results. One of my students actually, he moved in with me. He's a copywriter. He moved in with me. He lived with me for 8 months, and he hired me for coaching month 2, like my personal life coaching. And he had come downstairs and he was like, hey man, I really want to hire you for coaching, but my dad told me that I should ask you to show me your bank account and how much money you make before I coach with you. And I said, okay, why? He's like, well, it kind of just shows that you, that you've gotten for yourself what you are trying to help me get. And I said, well, is what you're trying to get money? He's like, well, that's a big part of it. I'm trying to build my business. I'm trying to grow this. I'm trying to become a better person, blah, blah, blah. And I said, hey, you've lived with me his name's Nick. You've lived with me for a month and a half now. Have you ever heard me complain about money? Well, no. Have you ever, when we go out to eat, have you ever paid? Or do I pay for you and everybody else at the table? Well, yeah. Do I get to just go travel? At the time, my now fiance, I was traveling every month to go out to see her in Austin, Texas. In like 2 months, I made like 4 flights out there to go see her. And that's, flights plus hotel, nice hotel, dinners, everything. That's $2,000 a flight, $8,000 over a few months to go see this girl. And I said, have you ever heard me talk about money as if I needed more of it? And he said, no. And I said, good, that's enough. Because that's what you're looking for. You're looking for a lifestyle where money doesn't dictate whether you get to go do something fun or not, right? And he said, yeah. And I said, do I have that? He said, yeah. I said, that's all you need to know. And he sits there and he's like, well, fuck. Because his dad had made him so confident in asking me how much money I made. And I said, I don't think my bank account matters, but only because you already know the answer. Is it enough? And he said, yeah. I said, you don't need to see a number. If you know that I make enough money for you to have the lifestyle you're looking for, and you trust me to get you there. And he's one of my best testimonials now. He does like $50K a month. He was in $3,500 a month last year, and it builds his business and is a better person for it. And it's able to help his family out. He's able to do the things that he's looking to do because he saw a better answer than what he was actually looking for. And I think as a coach, that's a big part of your job, is people think that they know what answer they're looking for from you. And your job is to tip it on its head and give them a better one.
Couldn't agree more. Kyree, I won't hold you up any longer. If people want to see part 2 or whatever it is, when I stream to YouTube too. So that's interesting. So we'll see what happens right there. Cool. Maybe we'll go viral. But yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Guys, I'll put all the links from Kyree down below. And yeah, he's an absolute beast. He probably doesn't need you, but you might want to check him out. It's pretty fucking good. So with that said, Kyree, thank you so much, man.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you again for having me on.
Should be good.
All
Thanks,
right.
man.